Hello, welcome. Happy New Year. Hello, everyone. Hello, welcome. Hi. Yes, I see the questions in the QA. So maybe wait, you guys cannot type in the chat? Is there a chat for you? Okay. Let me see how if I can enable the chat. Looks like I cannot. It's a webinar. Well, I guess the QA is the way to communicate. No worries. All right, cool. All right. So I see people are still coming in. That's a lot of people. It's a great start. First year, first webinars, R3 webinars. And it's the same Peter Lee. Unfortunately, we couldn't hire any nice looking ones. It's just me. All you got. All right. So let's give another maybe 2-3 minutes. We have over 100 registration right now. We are hitting 40, 43, 45. Oh, 50. All right, let's go. Okay, so let's give another 2 minutes. I see a hand raise. I can see it. If you have a questions, maybe you can drop in the QA, but that's how we're gonna interact for the sessions. The chat is disabled. It's a webinar. It's not a meeting. And me as a host, I can't change it right now. So if you have any questions, just drop in the QA, right? Or raise a hand, right? When we hit the QA sessions, you raise a hand. I allow you to talk, then we can have a chat. Let's give another minute. We are hitting 60 right now. Uh, wait, what? Is that an error? I only see 4 people in the attendee list, but it shows there are 66. I mean, obviously you guys couldn't see it. Let me check. Okay, now here we go. Another 30 seconds, then we will start. We are hitting 70. Looks like you guys are really eager to learn about Corda 5, huh? That's good. That's good. All right, 6:04. Let's get started. So, hello everyone. My name is Peter Lee. I work in the developer relations team here at R3. So for today's sessions, the title is Corda 5 Bitesize chat, right? So we want to give you a brief high-level overviews about our new products currently in beta testing. The beta release is looking to deploy in March, and then the GA release is in May. So just hang tight. The Corda 5 is not out there yet. I mean, the source code, I think is on GitHub, but it's currently developing, right? You don't want to step into the muddy water of you compiling everything, building the whole jars, and then deploy all the workers, etc. Trust me, it's a pain. I experienced it because I work here, so I got to try the software out while it's developed. But in March, in May, you will get a packaged software, so you can just deploy and then use it. Similar with how you work with the Corda 4 right now. So that's the sort of the release schedule. And I'm gonna share my screen and show you some, I guess, source for you to learn about Corda 5 yourself. So most of our content are like the talking ones. Besides this one, are in our previous QuarterCon sessions. So a third of the 2022 QuarterCon is about Corda 5. So if you just go to, you search Google QuarterCon 2020, you click the first one, you go to the QuarterCon 2022, there's a demand, watch on demand, right? So I go here. If you scroll down, there's the watch on demand, and then you go to this site. So you can select the interesting Corda 5 topics, right? You can just like watch now. So that's the video contents. If you are looking to, I am sharing my screen, right? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I just reshare. So that's all the video content. So if you're looking to read about it, right, there are 3 different places. So if you go to the developer.r3.com, you don't need to log in. You can just go to the blog, and you click the Corda or R3. So you can see we have articles about basically Corda 5. And but here is a little bit mixed. You got some Corda 4 content, you got some Corda 5 content. It's a mix, but you can pick the Corda 5 stuff to read about. We also have the Corda Medium. So it's just depends how you acquire articles online, right? If you want to go to our portal, you go to our portal. If you commonly, like, we're daily just get some articles on Medium, you can subscribe to Corda team, and then there's also like the Corda 5 contents here, the P2P review, the Corda 5, it's open source, like the announcement, stuff like that. So those are some contents channels for you to acquire about Corda 5. And of course, you can join the Corda Slack channel, right? So if you go to slack.corda.com, slack.corda.net, I think. Yeah. And then you will join the Corda Ledger. Well, I mean, right now it's redirecting me to the Corda Ledger, but if you haven't joined the Corda Ledger public Slack, so that's where you join the Corda Ledger public Slack. So yeah, so basically those are the ways you learn about Corda 5, after today. Okay, let's begin. So I'm gonna continue to share my screen. I gotta share a different app. All right. Presentation is on. So and I sort of situated myself with the Zoom setups already. So I have the QAs on my right screen, and yeah, I don't need a chat. So if you have any questions, just in between, feel free to drop in the QA because that's the way we communicate. All right, let's begin. So quarter 5 Bitesize. Again, my name is Peter Lee. I work for R3. So at Corda, right? So now we sort of find a very soft line that we want to call our software called Corda is the foundation of the digital economy. They used to call it the foundation of the future economy. I think is over exaggerated, but let's just keep it down to the earth. Foundation of digital economy. So Corda is a blockchain for business. It's applicable to all industries. It was built to satisfy all like the security privacy need of the banking industries, but it's definitely applicable to all industries. And we try to not narrow ourselves into just the financial market. If you really think about the word economy means basically everything. Not like the finance is a way to creating transaction between one another on the ledger layer. But if you're really talking about transactions on just the shipping or just get one product to another place, just creating some interactions, it's all creating it's all part of the economy. So our software is meant to be applicable to all industries. And lastly, when researching the blockchain, when starting researching the idea of blockchain, R3 started 7 years from 7 years ago from today. So back then, blockchain is isolated. So you're working on Bitcoin, it's Bitcoin chain. You're working on Ethereum, it's Ethereum chain. You're working on whatever chain is a different chain. But here at Corda, we're looking to break that. While utilizing the Corda DLT, the Corda ledger, we want to see a cross-industry ecosystem. So we want basically, we don't want silos on business. We want everybody to be able to work with one another, and everybody can easily work with one another using our software. So basically, those are the three taglines, I would say, for our software, and it's our vision. So Corda, there are primarily 4 characteristics or the signature benefit of using us. So the first one is strong identities and privacies. Second one is performance and scalabilities. The third one is R3. We help build a global Corda network where just to try to reach our goal of building a cross-industry ecosystem, our visions. So we build a global Corda network. So where companies can join as a node, and then they develop their smart contract, they can interact with one another. So they don't need to worry about setting up the whole network stuff. And lastly, Corda is designed to be easily interoperable with existing software. Banking, insurance, logistic, even custom, healthcare, all the capabilities. So that's the fourth characteristic that we are proudly to present. And Corda. So this is like a little recap. So Corda is a permission network, provides peer-to-peer communication on a need-to-know basis. So for any new joiners who just came in today, so we are somewhat like a blockchain, but we are more wanted to be called as a DLT, distributed ledger technology. So all the transaction is direct. They're not sharing with like the block space with other transactions, and all the transaction is immediately finalized. You don't need to wait for 6 or 5 or 6 more block to settle. Then you can call yourself, like you can call the previous block finalized to worry about the overthrown. Like Corda, we don't do that. So that's that. So far, everything I covered is the legacy we carried from Corda 4. And now introducing Corda 5. So Corda 5, we are moving the Corda platform towards the need of customers, primarily focusing on two angles: high availabilities and horizontal scalability. So, we label this as one angle. And then the second one is boosted development experience, including deployment experience. So what's new? We have a brand new architecture for Corda. So at Corda 5, we bring in Kafka clusters as a message brokers to facilitate communications between node service. Is quite drastic a jump. So in Corda 4 or the previous version of Corda, we use Artemis to be the message broker between one another, but between the service. But with Corda 5, we pick a brand new one, a Kafka. And in the later slide, I will basically talk about the pros of using the Kafka. So with Kafka cluster now being in the brain or the center of the Corda 5 platform, all the service where you used to write smart contract, like execute smart contract or do the database queries and creating like the RPC service, will all be stateless workers attached to the Kafka cluster. And a quick look of it, there will be 7 of them. So we will have a different diagram to like a colorful one to show it. But this one is just to showing you we are replacing. You can think like the spinal cord of the Corda system. So the new architecture actually brings a few new concepts. So the first one, as I mentioned, is event-driven workers, the new core of Corda for availabilities and scalabilities. And that ties back to the new angles that Corda 5 is good at. Also, again, the needs of our customers. So what are the event-driven workers? In this diagram, you see there are 7 color scheme workers, and we can go through one by one. So the first, let's actually begin from here, right? The gateway workers. So the gateway, so if you understand how Kafka, or if you have been working with Kafka before, so you know that Kafka cluster is basically an engine you can start service. But if you want to connect the Kafka cluster with another Kafka cluster, you basically need some gateway workers to populate the channels. So obviously, since now we're using Kafka clusters, we will need a gateway workers to route all the incoming, outgoing message into your Corda platform, Corda 5 platform. And that's the gateway worker. And then go to the pink one, link manager worker. So again, so inside of the Kafka clusters, you are basically it's an engine. You cannot view it as a Corda node anymore. And actually, in the later slide, we're going to talk about what the concept of node will evolve into. We call it the virtual node. So inside of one Kafka clusters, there will be actually multiple virtual nodes. We're talking about high availability. So one cluster can host multiple virtual nodes, and the link managers will be helping to populate connections or like channels between those virtual nodes. Because fundamentally, the idea of how Corda send messages will still remain the same. It needs to send from one node to another, right? And of course, the node tree. So now we don't have nodes, physical node anymore. The link manager will come in place to create connections between different virtual nodes. And going clockwise going to the database workers. So of course, that's pretty straightforward. We talking about IT system database is required. Crypto workers, the green one. Crypto workers are there because at the end of the day, we are utilizing the benefit of so-called blockchain, cryptographic, public key, private keys. The crypto workers will take care of that. API RPC worker. So this one is a very interesting one. So originally for Corda 4, you deploy your node, you write your smart contract where we call Corda app. You need to basically write another middleware called Spring RPC client, remote procedural client. And our example is written in Spring Boot. And for Corda 5, drum roll, you don't need to do that anymore. So the APIs or the RPC APIs will directly created inside of the clusters. So basically, you just deploy your Corda 5 clusters or clusters multiple, and you can just create your front-end app, and your front-end app can directly calling trigger transactions from via the API RPC workers from your virtual node. So that's a big enhancement. Basically, if you're thinking about like we're talking DevOps, we're talking about startup, we're talking about your software go-to-market time, that basically shortened at least a third. You just don't need to think about RPCs, period. So that's the API and RPC workers. Next one is flow work. So this one is a little bit deja vu. So if you're familiar with Corda smart contract has the component of the contract and the workflow. The contract is the state, and contract basically is a data object, and then the transaction rules that need to obey, and then it has a workflow. Workflow basically execute your command. And on Corda 5, the flow workers is the workers that to execute your flows. You have to have it, so there's not much to say. And lastly, the membership workers. So this one is very interesting. Originally with Corda 4, membership is basically its idea. We barely talk about. Towards the end of the development of Corda 4, we introduced a membership attestation SDKs. I wrote the samples, I published on GitHub, but I check out the stars and the forks. Barely anyone downloaded it. I cried. but basically, membership is not the idea. Is not popular idea in the Corda 4 development. However, it's a pretty common and important ideology in the business world. Is when you run when you run a network, different node, different identity has different class. They can trigger different flows, and this membership worker is prepared to do that work for you. And also another concept we haven't covered yet, we will talk about in the later slide, is Corda 5 now has a completely new way of deploying network, and that membership workers will basically perform all the actual work to deploy a Corda network on Corda 5. So that's basically the 7 workers on Corda 5 sitting on top of the Kafka broker cluster. There's a questions in the QA. Let me get that. Will the older version of Corda would be deprecated for decommission, and will be forced organization using or older versions to make an upgrade? As a modern and how do I say, as a modern software company, right, and like a honest one, so we will continue to support Corda 4 to a time. I think it's a 2-year extra support when the launch of Corda 5 GA. So the first part of your questions is will be deprecated in 2 years, not immediately. And the second part of the question will the organization be forced? Well, I wouldn't say forced. It's just, we offer better software, so it's I would say it's a smart decision if you make them. So yeah, so that's answer the questions. I gotta make a pause here. So Kafka, workers, so far, any other questions, or so far so good? Okay. Take that as a okay. So far, another question. So what's the difference between Corda 5 open source and Corda 5 enterprise? So okay, so I asked that question to engineering every day. So right now, everything we are talking about here is Corda 5 open source, and Corda 5 enterprise, like they still haven't how would I say, it's still in development. I don't know yet, but anything I'm like sort of talking today will be in the Corda 5 GA. You will be able to get all of that. So that API RPC would come out of the box to control which flow to trigger, all the flow to trigger. So so basically the smart contract that you write will be your smart contract flows, and then that's the API RPC worker will translate into REST APIs. And that's a little bit into the development of Corda 5 smart contracts. So right now, Corda 4 operating on communicating, like transacting the return type is an object, right? But with Corda 5, it's standardized is a JSON object. So all of your smart contract flows need to take in and then spit out JSON formulated object. So that means all the APIs RPC workers will be able to understand it. So so that's that. And then the Corda clusters, embedded or Corda libraries will be already translated by us into or like by the API RPC worker. So you can call them like the queries, standard queries, populate into APIs. So really, you just develop a front end, or we don't talk about front end. We talk about Postman. You start your clusters. You drop your Corda smart contract into the Corda clusters. You start a Postman, you can transact, period. You don't need to Spring Boot RPC client anymore. What cloud service do you guys use? Okay, so very concrete question. So right now in beta testing, they are testing with AWS. That's what our engineer is using. Me, on the other hand, as a developer relations guys, my job is to don't do what the Corda engineer do. So after today, starting probably next year, after the Chinese New Year, I will actually start testing Corda 5 beta deployment with Azure. And if I got extra time, maybe I try with GCP. But right now, engineering, they're using AWS. They are testing it extensively with EKS. So all of this need to be on Kubernetes. So that's, we're gonna talk about it in the later slide. Next one. Do we need to change our Corda apps to migrate from Corda 4 to Corda 5? Are there simple guides? Yes, you need to migrate. Guide, they are working on it. We are still 5 months away from GA, and the Corda 4 support still has 2 years. So if you ask me, there's no rush. You can take your time. We're gonna be there with you, for you. Right, so, okay, I'm gonna answer 3 more questions, and then we're gonna continue. so we are not even halfway done. Any performance enhancements in Corda 5 relate to faster transaction time? Oh, okay, yeah. Absolutely, and you will see why in the next slide. Any automatic migration from Corda 4 to Corda 5. So right now we are working on a migration plan. So maybe the ideal result is some automations, but I doubt it. I think you need to write some of this smart contract. Absolutely. Yeah, okay. I gonna stop the answering the question. I gonna go to a few more slides and then we go back to the questions. All right. So on this slide, event-driven workers, right? Kafka. Then how does this get what we want? High availabilities and horizontal scalabilities. So this is how we get where we are. So at Corda 4, right? So if we're talking about like we have some we have one node, a physical node, and there's a lot of transaction coming in, right? Even though we tell every customers each node should be bind to one identities, but people love the Corda accounts. People, customers, they will put multiple, like so many transactions into one node, and then the node are on the point of like jam. Then what you can do is you can get a bigger node, right? That's always how you solve the problem. Like it's too, you out of the usage, you get a bigger one, right? If you run into the same issue again, you get another bigger one. So that's a Corda 4, but there's always cost associated with it. Every disk space, every RAM space, every memory space needs to like cost, right? But with Corda 4, but with Corda 5, so you begin with a Kafka broker clusters. You are running with one worker each, right? If you are running into performance issues, you call for help. You call for more workers, horizontally scale to more workers to help your transactions. And same with the database workers and HSM workers. HSM is for our enterprise customers. So that's horizontal scalabilities. So that's like scale up, right? When you're done using it, so what you can do is you can shut them off. That's gonna at some time generate zero time for if you're using cloud service. But from my recent test, I think at least you need to keep one. But that's the scale down, right? Keeping one is pretty okay to do. But we're talking about scale up, is gonna be much easier to do on Corda 5. So talking about performance. So now basically you have it's a elastic situation, right? If you need more, you just spawn more workers. If you need less, right, the request is sort of reducing for this timeout period. You just sort it back to what, right? So that's the horizontal scalabilities, and this is done via Kubernetes. Yes, so Corda 5, the Kafka cluster need to deploy onto something, right? And then we choose Kubernetes. Next, high availabilities. So similar with horizontal scalabilities, thanks to the Kubernetes. So if one of your workers or multiple of your workers is having issues, you can just like get rid of them, delete them. They are stateless. They are nothing, right? You can just like throw them out like garbage. But and more workers will spawn in. Again, utilizing the concept of Kubernetes workers. No, sorry, not Kubernetes, like Kubernetes and Kafka workers. So you can basically have the workers deploy to the Kafka clusters onto the Kubernetes, and if you run into issue with one, get rid of them, and then more will come. So that's basically how we're gonna achieve high availabilities with Corda 5, with the new Kafka clusters and the use of Kubernetes. I gonna continue a little bit more. So that's the event-driven workers. So next one is idea, the new concept, right? The new architecture brings new concept. And what's the second one? The second one is virtual node. So logically equivalent to the Corda 4 nodes, multiple nodes for Corda instance, it really should be clusters. So the virtual node represents the mapping between process, data, identities to create a logical virtual node. So it's not physical. It's not tied with any of the event-driven workers. The event-driven workers, they are stateless. They don't know anything. They just execute, right? Corda 5 virtual nodes able to represent the equivalent of multiple Corda 4 nodes. I mean, oh no, I think this just means like Corda 5 virtual nodes are able to represent the equivalent of Corda 4. No, I think I typed the wrong thing. It's just this line from the previous slide. So the next one Corda 5 worker cluster can host multiple virtual nodes. So this is on the diagram, the picture here. So you have one clusters, you can have Alice, Charlie, Bob, and Alice again. And you see, since they are virtual workers, Alice, you can have multiple network be performed, or like the virtual node can join different networks. So Alice, the same Alice, she can join both network 1 and network 2 at the same time using same Corda cluster service, resource, but set up 2 different virtual nodes. So the Alice virtual node in network 1 is independent from Alice virtual node in network 2. And the network is actually the fourth concept we're going to talk about. Segregated and isolated from each other using sandboxing technology. So yes, so that's basically what I just said. Multiple network and multiple tenant. Again, the example of Alice. And this red box is a little bit of like why we are designing this way. It's just flexible operating models. So from the knowledge, right, from the things we learned from Corda 4 times, setting up the network and arranging for different onboarding, offboarding of our customers' client is pretty, it's a lot of work. I wouldn't say it's difficult work, but it's just like work you need to do. But with this, everything becomes flexible. You want to join network 1, sure, you join network 1. You want to join network 2, sure, you want to join network 2. So the consortium, like Contour, Polo, they can just start one Corda 5 clusters or multiple Corda 5 clusters. And the user can be in more than one network. So obviously on the diagram, low cost to add and end users. So without physical node, that means there's no cost associated setting up a digital identity on the Corda network. So that's all, again, very obvious. Maintain isolations and it's portable. So all of that is, we already talked about it. So that's Corda 5 virtual nodes. And the next diagram, next slide is a little bit comparison with Corda 4 and Corda 5. So Corda 4, you need to have the vault, like database, connected to the node, and then the node has the identity, and then the identity basically is what the network issue you the identity. So on top of that, it has an app, right? If you're talking about multi-tenancies, you have to deploy the Kafka SDK. But with Corda 5, we call it enhanced multi-tenancy design. So you have the Kafka clusters is one Corda host. You can have ideally as many as you want virtual node, and then the virtual nodes is a vertical representation of different service workers. The vault is a DB worker. The app is whatever app you give to that virtual worker. The identity goes to the virtual node. The identity is what the network management, give it to the virtual node, and then on the very top is the logical network, but every node is isolated. Every virtual node is isolated from one another. So now if you think about originally in Corda 4 times, you're talking about Corda, that's a node, right? Period. Corda is a node, and I don't have my iconic, the big red Corda logo, and then I said, oh, the flow is the execution command. You pass to the node, and the node will give you a transaction. Node is everything. Abstract away the complexity, right? If you watch the like me doing the Corda 101 bootcamp for Corda 4, you will remember what I'm talking about. So Corda 4 time, node is everything, but Corda 5, node is just a group of service that you need to know at that time of period. And if you're done with using that node, what you can do is actually throw away all the service you just use, because they are not yours anyway. They are stateless. Everybody can use it. Okay, so that's that. Next is a new plus modular API. So I'm gonna pause here. I see there are some questions already piled up. I'm gonna try to answer them. So any change to the notary doorman network service map? Yes. So we're gonna talk about that in the later slide. There's a section about network. When is Corda 5 enterprise expect to be available? Actually, I don't know. Right now, everybody is working on the Corda 5, like the core. Enterprise will be like the peripheral add-ons, like security, like maybe better performance. Like right now, but right now I don't know yet. In Corda 5, using API REST workers can help reducing overwork for writing Spring microservice HTTP. Yes, you don't need to write that anymore. So the API REST, the API RPC workers will, well, it's actually not the workers. Workers just do it, right? It's the Corda code, the Corda source code, Corda core. I need to come up with a name to describe like the Corda, the object. So basically, it's a Corda 5 platform that generates all the APIs for you. So you don't need to write any HTTP method anymore. Where does the Corda live in this diagram? So diagram, well, if you're talking about this diagram, is there. So it's a package you drop to your virtual node. It doesn't like how to say, it's when you deploy your clusters, you don't need have your Corda app develop yet. So okay, so actually you remind me, I need to mention another thing. I wanted to save it to the next session, like completely, like not today. So, but I want to let you guys know first. So in Corda 5, smart contract development is different than Corda 4. So Corda 4, you clone my template, and then you start like changing the code, and then that's your Corda app. You hit deploy nodes, that builds your jars, and you can call run nodes, and then it drops in the Corda app folder. So that's the Corda 4 way. And then the Corda 4, the enterprise way, is you do the development again. You build your jars, you sign your jars with extra security layers, your PKIs or your certificate, and then you drop that jar into your Corda node, drop into the physical node. That was a Corda 4 time. But Corda 5, when you're developing a smart contract, Corda app, right? You're developing it in a sandbox. So there's it's actually released already. Sandbox, but that is not complete. It's only like the preview. It's called Corda Standard Development Environment, CSDE. It's a sandbox. So all of your code is developed in the sandbox. And after you develop, you need to use a Corda tool terminal tools to package it into binaries, and then you drop that binary into the virtual node, into like basically the where your virtual node gonna pick up. So Corda 4, Corda 5 is a little bit different. So Corda 4 is you develop, you can you need to drop it into the physical node. And if you are just using open source, you just use the network bootstrapper, you can just deploy. But with Corda 5, development and deployment are separate, and they are far, far, far different, each things. So if you're just talking about coding, the smart contract, you got to use the sandbox. You have to. And deployment is all these like Kafka stuff. So that's that. Next questions. Any plans for managed Corda service or with hyperscalers? Managed Corda service, if you're talking about the project that we used to have, the Corda management service is basically a R3 host Corda service for you. I don't think they are plans for Corda 5 right now. No, not yet. Who is expected to own, control, manage the Kafka cluster? Single company, N companies, neutral service provider. So ideally, it's a consortium where you have a group of companies like Contour, like Marco Polo, right? You run a Kafka clusters, and all your clients can get onto your Kafka clusters to do stuff, right? A single company will be a little bit too powerful, because that means all the other companies will need to sort of like listen to you, because you own the Kafka. You can get rid of them like any second. So I would argue, right, consortium or multiple companies form as a group will be the best entity to host the Kafka cluster. Are you using Kubernetes in Corda 5 to scale? Yes. To confirm, with Corda 5 virtualizations, each party can span one or more node workers. Yes. So party is a specific Corda terminology. So if you mean identity or company, yes. So each companies can spun up one or more virtual node workers if that virtual node has a lot of transaction coming in and out. You know, we talk about high availabilities and scalabilities. Are there any plans to provide Kubernetes templates to deploy Corda 5 on Kubernetes? Yes. So that would be so it obviously sounds like my team's job to provide sample template and guide, but the engineering team is a little bit split on that, because Kafka Kubernetes is a Wild West. So it will be a little bit too arrogant for us, our engineer, to say, here's how you can get the best performance Kubernetes or Kafka clusters. So at the beginning, so our expectation is our customers, they will find and then tune into configurations for Kubernetes and Kafka's that suits their needs the best, right? So that's the engineering. But for us, for me personally, yes, I think we will try to get tutorials at least to get it running. But the tutorial wouldn't associate with performance or anything. It's just, it's a minimal variable product to get it up for you. Set it up. Next, does Corda 5 use Kafka 2.8 without Zookeeper? No, we are using the previous one with the Zookeepers. Each stakeholder part of the network will host their own Kafka clusters, not talking about scenario with account feature. No, you need ideally one network is one Kafka clusters. Multiple network can be multiple. No, I mean, I'm again. So this is pretty preliminary for me to make suggestions or recommendations, but and obviously I shouldn't use the word ideally, but what you can do is one network, just one Kafka clusters. If any participant in this network want to talk to another network, and that network has a Kafka cluster, so you should think the Kafka cluster as a very large umbrella, and then inside of the umbrella is all the virtual node. So you don't need too many Kafka clusters. And plus, if your network is sophisticated, your Kafka cluster gonna have a lot of node under it, just in your cluster. So you really don't need a lot of Kafka clusters to make a business network. I'm keep answering questions, but why quite like more questions keep coming in? Like I see the open ticket is like 7. It's just the number won't drop. Okay, I'm gonna get one more, and then we're gonna continue. We have 2 more sections to cover. So can virtual node be spun up with API on demand? I haven't tested yet, but so that's more into the development. You know, today is all about concept. So okay. I just answered another one. It's still 7 up there. No, and kidding. So okay, all right. So next one. So new plus modular API. So again, new architecture for Corda 5 come with new concept, right? So we are like so another way to look at Corda product in general, we are now cut them into 4 layers: the network interface, workflows, shared ledgers, and smart contract. And smart contract is like your smart contract, your Corda. So what is the layer cake? The network interface, you know, start from the bottom, secure the network and the peer interactions. It's the P2P preview. So if you look at, there was a blog published by one of our senior engineers, Demos. He talked about like his team working on the P2P layer of the Corda network. No, not Corda, Corda software. And on top of it is a workflow. So this is all the service hub, the service flows, not your workflow, but the Corda, the crypto flows, confidential identity flows, and all that flow. So that's a workflow layer. The bare minimum to keep your Corda platform functions, right? You know, sending the initiate the sessions, you know, sending the pings, or like all that. Shared ledger. So this is your Corda, your state and contract. And lastly is a contract, is a program enforced of the business logic. This is like your workflow, your smart contract workflow. Let's skip the whys. So this is another pictorial diagram of the layer cake. So at the bottom is the peer discovery, identity-based over work, Corda firewalls, protocol breaks, and like all that. And we are introducing a different concept of how to setting up a network called the membership management. But that's the next sections. But the green part is the network. So this is the part where you don't need to worry about and you don't touch, right? You just use it. But we are presenting to you, right? So you know, that's the foundations of how your virtual nodes or how your transactions are communicating with each other is via the network interface, but you don't get to touch it. The workflow is basically simple remote procedural calls, some queries, fault-tolerant workflow, messaging queues, all that. Again, like you don't touch that. It's just we are presenting it to you so you know it's there, right? And maybe for debugging, you can easily identify where's the error coming from. It's from the network or from the workflow. So with the yellow part, with the green part, you can't run any of your business logic, but you can, if you're interested, you can use the workflow and then the network interface to come up with some not so-called blockchain software. So maybe we like, a few months ago internally we were talking about like a chat app, just utilizing the P2P Kafka and then the workflow. Because really, to be honest, what's a chat app? It's just sending a message from one peer to another peer, right? So the workflow and the network interface allow you to do that. You don't need to, just imagine we're not talking about blockchain today. Just with Corda, workflow and the network interface is, you can build something with these two layers. And plus, right? So when we're talking about blockchains, you can use these two layers to actually build the chat app along with your DLT. Just imagine you are running a DLT service and then also using the native chat app with your counterparty. That would be something pretty cool, right? So that's the Corda core platform APIs defined below, right? The bottom part, the part you don't get touch, you don't get override. You don't get write, you don't get override. And then on the top of it is the Corda app. So the shared ledger is your vault, is your private agreement, is your state, is your contract, and then the smart contract. So this too is a little bit blurry. So basically it's just it's your business logic. The reason they cut it out too separately, because you can use the workflow to transact something with just a shared ledger, because it's common knowledge, without any sophisticated or complex business logic, meaning your Corda workflow. So now with a layer cake, 4 different levels cut it out for you, so you can rethink about how you want to structure your Corda and how you can utilize Corda 5. And if you just don't want to think any of this, it just we can scratch this section, because if you really don't think about it, you just do the Corda 4-way, develop your smart contract. That's it. So for these sections, not a lot change, but it's just we are cutting out each layer and then display it in front of you, so you know what you are working with. All right, so that's the third one. So new and modular APIs, and the last one is application network. So this one is pretty new, actually brand new concept. So the Corda 5 application network is a network of virtual node peers. Permissioning is managed by a peer via the platform applications. So I'm gonna talk about when I finish reading. So network and apps are defined by and installed by a single artifact, installer, binaries, and applications loaded from the installer, network details taken from the installer itself, and the membership requirement defined in the installer. So that's what I was talking about. So when you develop a smart contract, you develop in the sandbox, the CSDE, and then you package them into this installer, and then you deploy your Corda 5 clusters, you set up your virtual node, you drop that installer into your virtual node, and then your virtual node is going to instantly pick up everything, join the network instantly, know what Corda app it can run instantly. So everything is in that installer. And it's called the CPI. So again, today is high level. We are not going to talk about any of the details or technical today. And at the bottom, why is less upfront coordinations, and it makes it simpler to manage a network. And next is the steps. So the management, membership management is called MGM. So how you set up, like this is all the going to the packaging of how you set it up. Basically it's become an extra step you're gonna do after you package, and then you set up the MGM. and set up, create all the virtual node. So that's that. I'm running out of time, but so this is a 4 concept that came with the new architectures. The event-driven workers for high availability and scalabilities. Virtual nodes just get rid of the Corda for physical node, reduce the cost, right? And the hassle to deal with a physical node. New plus modular APIs to present it to you so you can maybe reconsider the structure of your Corda 4 and how you can utilize Corda 5. And the application network. So this one is basically a new concept, but is sort of is more into the technicals of how we actually do it, but we are not going to covering it today. Let's maybe spend, okay, so and this is a thank you note. So maybe let's spend another 10 minutes together, try to answering some questions here, and maybe try to get all the questions if it's possible. So how to compare the performance of Corda 4 open source with Corda 4 enterprise? So right now it's in beta. So Corda 5 is still not packaged yet. They're still moving, so we haven't do performance comparison yet. Yeah, so that's that. Can Corda accounts and the virtual nodes be combined? No. We are deprecating the ideas of Corda accounts in Corda 5. It's just virtual node. You don't need accounts in the virtual nodes. Yeah, are they complementary? No. So it's just the virtual node sort of is replacing the Corda accounts. So on the idea or the concept side, so both accounts and virtual nodes is meant for multi-tenancy. So they are the same thing. So yeah, it's a replace. To maximize cost saving for low volume parties, we are combining both account now. Yeah, again, I haven't heard Corda accounts will be part of Corda 5, so I guess not. Are we supporting account SDK in Corda 5? Yeah, as I said, I don't think so. Do we have practical example in GitHub build on top of the Corda 5 CSD? Not yet, because the CSD currently not finished. Again, we are 3 months away from beta release, 5 months away from GA. Today just get you hyped up. But the CSD currently there's a version release for the network layer. So currently the Corda 5 CSD has the green part and then the yellow part. So if you want to build a chat app, you can build a chat app. But no ledger yet. So if you are here for the blockchain part, the CSD currently you can't build a DLT yet. Will the sandbox or CSD be shipped with Corda 5? Yes. Yes, of course. The sandbox, the CSD is part of the Corda 5 release. How can we plan to migrate from Corda 4 to Corda 5? We are working on it. So just stay tuned with our blogs, right? The developer portal, all that. If we came up with like article, right? Write up, we're gonna publish it. Kafka with Zookeeper has been discarded by many enterprises due to high operational issues. Well, I mean, unfortunately, Peter Lee is not the guy making the decision. But yeah, right now we are still using Zookeepers. Do you have any examples system requirement for simple Corda 5 networks? Yeah. Let's talk about it in the next sessions. Yeah, about technical. I seen it somewhere, but I forgot. Me personally, when I using Kafka, I deploy everything Kafka, Kubernetes. I using Docker. I gave 10 gigabyte of RAM and 6 CPUs to run it, but I'm doing it to give me like cut myself an easy time, but not because that's the minimum. So maybe I will look it up internally and see if we have any wikis around that. For network, there can be several Corda 5 nodes, right? Virtual nodes, right? And each of the Corda 5 nodes, they can be one Kafka cluster and several virtual nodes. Okay, so so let me restate that. So for network, most likely you only need one Kafka clusters, and in that Kafka clusters you can start several virtual nodes. Yeah. Kafka node will be shared with only virtual node or physical node also. There's no physical node in Corda 5. It's just Kafka. No, Kafka clusters, inside Kafka clusters, virtual nodes. Corda 5 will boost interoperabilities with other public chain to store some part of the data. Yes. So so that's like the vision talk, right? Peter Lee is I'm the concept talk. So during CordaCon, the product manager, like the head of product, John Shaw, and the principal engineer, Dr. Kat Baker, they talk about in 2023, R3 will start working drastically on interoperability with other chains. We first, of course, we want to taking care from Corda chain to Corda chain, right? So there are companies, right? They like to set up their own playground, and then suddenly they want to play with other networks. So first is we want to take care different business network they want to merge, right? Because our vision is create cross-industry ecosystem, right? So that's the first. And second is Corda with Ethereum. So we already actually have Corda 4 demoed with Corda 4 demo on Corda 4 with Ethereum. My colleague Sneha, she spent the past few months actually flying around the world doing conferences just to talk about it. So if you search on YouTube or Google Corda Ethereum, you probably can find something, or you join the Corda Slack, Corda public Slack. You ping me, I will find the link for you. But yes, Corda 5, not Corda, just Corda 5. R3 is looking to increase the interoperability with other public blockchain. Will we have any webinars in the future to guide migration of Corda from 4 to 5, or some part of guidance document which can help this? Of course, but right now we are still pretty far from the GA, so you got your time, so don't worry. Stay tuned, definitely. Will token SDK be part of Corda 5? Yes, I think so. Yeah, and I searched GitHub. Not search, like I was on R3 GitHub, and actually I saw Corda 5 token SDK. So yes, probably, but it's not with GA. So maybe with Corda 5.1 or 5.2 or something. If there are 100,000 or more stakeholders who should be part of a network, we plan to use Corda. Will Corda 5 be able to support spawning that many pods? Will be too much, right? So I think I read it somewhere that our internal deployment, we were testing 2,000 virtual node or 200, only takes 30 seconds. But yes, 100,000 will be a drastically big number. And for that, you probably need multiple clusters, maybe 10 clusters. Yeah. So it will be too much for one clusters, I think. I'm not like Kafka gurus. Maybe if there's any real Kafka gurus, so maybe they can tell you, but I'm new to Kafka too. If the whole network is on Kafka cluster, how is still a DLT? Okay, so let me find. Okay. Okay, I was sort of like saving this for the next session. So this is a like message life cycles. So you can see that so in the middle is HTTPS, right? So just like forget about all this like concept here. But what I want to show you is you have one clusters on the left, you have another clusters on the right. So the link managers are trying to connect with each other. So your basically your transaction, the end receiver of your transaction is a virtual node. So and every virtual node is connected with the database. So in sense of how is that still a blockchain? It's a DLT, it's a distributed ledger system, as long as the data is not in one database and the database is not in a single control of one person, is what we would call a DLT. And in our eyes, the blockchain should be a DLT. Yeah, so yeah, okay, so maybe this slide is a bad slide to answer your question, but I couldn't find another one to answer it from the slide. So, but yeah, so as long as there's the concept of a virtual node and each identity is bind with that virtual node, that in our eyes is a DLT. Help me understand how consortium would manage a Corda 5 system together. Would each consortium member manage its own Corda network and Kafka clusters? No. Consortium will manage one Kafka clusters, and the participant of the consortium will just have their own Corda 5 virtual node. Yeah. Each flow request or data reach all participants. Is that correct? No. So yeah, so that's not how Corda works. Corda never do broadcast. All Corda transaction is from peer to peer. So it means each flow request or data only reach to the counterparty that is relevant to the transaction. Any plan for integrating with ERC20 token Ethereum? I think again with the demo we had, it is actually a ERC20 token, but I forgot. It's been a while since I follow the Corda Ethereum work. Yeah. The centralized Kafka cluster seem closer to how Fabric order works. Couldn't make a comment. Not too familiar with Fabric order. Isn't Kafka broadcast all message? So that's what's like popular usage of Kafka is for broadcast and listening, but with basically the Corda twist, the Kafka the Corda 5 clusters only broadcast transaction to the designated counterparties. So the concept of P2P still is there. So we're not changing that. That's what makes Corda unique. All right. So that's all the questions. And thanks everyone for joining. My name is Peter Lee. I work for R3. I'm trying to hold on. I'm trying to get try to get a link, try to get a survey link, so to collect some feedback. So let me see. So that's also gonna well here, yeah, find it. So I'm gonna drop in the chat because you guys can see the chat. So that's the link for today's session. So if you have any feedback or any questions, you can leave it in the feedback. So maybe I gotta address them in our next sessions. So all right. Thanks everyone. Thanks for coming. Stay tuned for our future articles or videos, and register our developer portals. So all of our content will first publish there, developer.r3.com. So let me share that again, actually. This is our developer portal. Okay. All right. Okay, another QA. Thank you for the session. No, thank you for coming. All right, thanks everyone. See you next time. Bye.